Hello everyone, my name is Michele Domanico, one of the system engineers here at Veeam Software for UK and Ireland. Welcome to everyone, and what we'd like to do today is to quickly discuss how we can protect Office 365 and in particular the reasons why we need to protect the Office 365 data. Before doing this, we'd like to give a quick introduction on who Veeam is and what we do. So Veeam as a company has been founded back in 2006, and since then the company has been evolving and growing very, very quickly. We are counting more than 3,000 employees global, and we have more than 300,000 customers worldwide. We're growing a net rate of 4,000 net new logos. I wish they were UK and Ireland numbers, but actually they are spread all over the world. Now, we're lucky to say that more than 75% of the Fortune 500 is not just using our products, but they're also suggesting our products, which is also helping us to promote and explain why we have a very high net promoter score, which is one of the highest within the industry. Now, in terms of our success, this is due to the fact that we are sharing our vision with our customers. And from that perspective, in terms of what we do, probably Veeam is known best for the backup and replication for physical workloads. And you're right, it's how we started back in 2008. But since then, we've been evolving and adding more and more solutions into what we call today the Veeam Availability Platform. And as you can see, the Veeam Availability Platform is a combination of different suites of products that can help you to complete the journey from protecting your workloads on-prem up to the cloud, and this can be for any type of cloud, so that can be PaaS, IaaS, and SaaS. Now, in terms of mentioning the SaaS cloud, of course, Office 365 is second to none. It's one of the best SaaS examples that we have nowadays, and this is what we are going to cover today. So we're going today the Veeam Backup for Office 365 proposition. So, backup for Office 365, why are so critical the reasons for protecting the data when it comes down to Office 365? So generally speaking, I would say one of the questions that usually comes up is, why do we need to protect Office 365? Is it not Microsoft taking care of everything? And to be honest, this was one of the questions I was asking myself in the first place when I applied for the 365 certification. And currently, I'm a 365 customer in a sense that I have a working E3 license that I'm using for different purposes. So I was asking, okay, why we need to take a backup of this data? Is not Microsoft taking care of everything? And this is one of the biggest misunderstandings in the industry. Now, to quickly answer this one, we need to understand what the customer perception is in general. The customer perception is that Microsoft is taking care of both the infrastructure and the data. This is where we need to decouple the concept of infrastructure management from data management. And what Microsoft is doing is, in order to protect the Office 365, is true to a certain degree, where they are protecting the infrastructure rather than the data. So the 4 nines that are available in this case for 365, they refer to the infrastructure, not the data. So that means that if we start to decoupling this concept from the infrastructure management and the from the data management, you can clearly see how Microsoft in this case, but this applies also to other service providers. So think about Dynamics, think about Salesforce, just to name a few. That uptime refers to the infrastructure, and the responsibility for protecting the data by providing both a short and long-term data protection plan has never moved away from the owner of the data, which in this case is you or the customer. So the responsibility, again, never moved from the owner of that data to the cloud provider. So when you embark into a 365 project and new subscription, what they say as well is, with Microsoft 365, it's your data, you own it and you control it. And this is giving us the opportunity to basically create a complementary solution that is mitigating the risk, I should say, eliminating, to be more accurate, the risk of losing access to your Office 365 data. And this can be any combination of your Exchange data, SharePoint, and OneDrive. It applies to both on-premises instances, but also to online instances, as we'll cover later on. So we've done an internal survey, and it looks from the survey, you can see there's a staggering 76% that does not have a backup for the simple reason that they are relying to the Microsoft infrastructure. So for example, the recycle bin, that of course is your first line of defense. There's a staggering 38%, so which is half of the 76 that doesn't have a backup yet, but they're looking to implement a backup solution for the Office 365 data. So in terms of the reason why you should protect the Office 365 data, well, there's a number of reasons, but what I've done here is to group them into the most popular, I would say, use cases. So starting from the left, you can see the accidental deletion. With the accidental deletion, we're not referring just to the email or file that you delete from OneDrive by mistake, for the simple reason that you can quickly and simply restore that file or that email or that item using the recycle bin, first or second stage recycle bin. But give you this scenario. What if the help desk into your company is instructed to remove or cancel or deactivate a user, and that user, for example, is a leaver, someone is leaving the company? Guess what? That information about deleting the data is geo-replicated now into all the data centers that Microsoft provides when it comes down to the 365. So that means that when the data is deleted, data is gone and cannot be restored by Microsoft itself as well. But there are also other use cases. So think about the retention policies, and I will delude more on the next slide on this one, where the default retention policies, they can generate a bit of confusion. Attacks that can be both a combination of internal and external attacks. So think about a hacker. So think about rogue apps that are exposing or stealing or poisoning your data. But that applies also to internal attacks. So think about departing users, departing employees that on purpose are deleting content before leaving the company. And last but not least, also outages that has to be seen as a two-way street. So when you think about outages, you can think of a situation where you cannot access the Office 365 data center. But what if this is the other way around? What if you are working in a scenario where you have a robot type of implementation? So a specific part of the data is sitting on specific offices that are now isolated. So when it comes down to retention policies, what you see here is the default MRM. MRM stands for Message Records Management Policy. And this is the evolving into the retention policies, which is the name that Microsoft will use across the board when it comes down to the 365 products and solutions. So by default, you can see in the case of an exchange online, or you can see that the data can be, of course, or I should say the emails, items. They can be categorized into different folders and subfolders. They can be a combination of inbox, any folder you might create into your mailbox, deleted items, AutoCAD data, junk emails, and so on. And as you can see, the default retention policy is giving you up to 2 years before moving the data to an archive, if you have that up and running and is configured. For deleted items, the data will stay there into the recycle bin for 14 days before getting permanently deleted. Now, to be fair, you still have a 14 days on top of the month, so it's a month and a half. And if you are an Exchange admin and you know how to use PowerShell, you can further extend the 14 days for another 14. So actually, the data will be sitting to your mailbox for a total of 2 months before getting permanently deleted. But that is something that only Exchange admins that have the knowledge of PowerShell they can do. Otherwise, that option is not enabled by default. But what about the junk emails, for example? You might be in a situation where emails are going to the junk folder. How many times you control the junk folder to make sure that there's no important message there? Almost never. So that means that some emails can go into the junk emails folder. They can stay there for a few weeks before getting permanently deleted, and the data is gone. And again, there can be also in a case where employees are leaving a company, and depending on the subscription type, data is preserved by Microsoft for 30 days before getting permanently deleted. How can you protect yourself? Using VBO, short for Veeam Backup for Office 365. you can create your own policy, you can set up your own retention policy, you can use your own storage, and you can decide for how long you want to keep any type of data. Another use case that is proving very, very popular is this one. Well, the question usually is, okay, why should I use VBO, Veeam Backup for Office 365, if effectively I can take advantage of the litigation and in place hold features? Now, what these features they do is basically they apply a hold to the entire mailbox or specific items, and they prevent changes from that to happen, and that can be indefinite. Now, the first and the shortest answers I can give to this question is the litigation and in place hold is not meant to be used as a replacement for a backup and archive mechanism. And to help answering this question, I've created this quick animation. So if you take a mailbox, in the mailbox, what you can see is the user mailbox storage. That essentially is a combination of inbox folders, any custom folder you create, deleted items, and so on. There's another part of that folder, sorry, of that storage, mailbox storage, that is still part of the same mailbox and is called recoverable items. That area is not visible to you as the owner of that mailbox, but it's not even visible to the Exchange admin for the Exchange organization. So if you take a classic email, that email goes into the inbox. Then after some work on the email, that maybe the email gets deleted, it goes into deleted items. And that is staying there for 30 days using the default retention policies. If nothing happens, that email will go into the recoverable items area, into the deletions folder, which is a hidden folder, for 14 days. That is also known as soft deletion. It's something you can do from any item. You can do that with a shift plus cancel. If nothing happens during these 14 days, automatically that email will go into the purges folder, a hard deletion. Now, in the hard deletion or hard delete purges folder, there's a component that is called MFA. The MFA stands for Mailbox Folder Assistant, that based on a schedule that Microsoft decides, not you as a customer, this schedule basically is automatically purging everything that is inside the purges folder. And that can be any combination of mail items, contacts, calendar items, pretty much anything that you can have inside the mailbox. You may say, okay, it's not a big deal. We have 50 gigabytes by default, so we have plenty of space. Yes, that is very true. If you take a look at that 50 gigabyte, in reality, out of that 50 gigabyte, the usable part of a mailbox is only 20 gigabyte by default. And that is a number that Microsoft decides because it's their infrastructure. So you don't have access to this level of information or configuration. The remaining 30 gigabyte is the space that Microsoft will be using for the, I should say Exchange in this case, will be using for the recoverable items. So what happens is you'll be surprised when you enable the litigation in place hold, how quickly you will fill up this storage space. When this happens, the the mailbox is not usable unless you are freeing up space by deleting content or buying extra storage. How can you avoid this? By protecting your content using Veeam Backup for Office 365, where you can choose what and where and how to protect the content. There's another thing I would like to say from this perspective. The worst thing that can happen, and unfortunately I've seen this in real life, that when you enable the litigation in place hold to replace the backup, and then you remove the litigation in place hold feature because you're reaching the maximum space out of the 50 gigabyte, that litigation period has a longer period compared to the retention, which means that when the litigation in place hold feature is removed, automatically the MFA will kick in and will delete everything and the data will be gone. So we released VBO, the first release a year ago, and since then we've been recording very high interest and very high success, to the point where even our customers, they say it just works. Based on internal survey that we've done, we have more than 77% of our customers are very satisfied about the performances and the capabilities of our solution. And there's a number of quotes that I wanted to include in this presentation. But what I've done here is to just take a few. The one I prefer is the one on the top left that says, "Before this product, I thought my emails are safe. Now I'm sure they're safe," which is telling pretty much about the misconception within the industry when it comes down on Microsoft as a cloud provider that is taking care of everything when it comes down to the Office 365 data. So what's new on version 2.0? So version 2.0 essentially has been built on top of the version 1.0 and is being built across three main pillars. The first one is what we call increased scalability. That essentially means that as soon as you are increasing your footprint into the 365, this can be either with online and also with on-prem solutions. Basically, you can use the same installation, the same deployment of the VBO to scale out and scale up without any additional cost from an infrastructure perspective, which is an ideal solution, not just for customers that are growing, but also for service providers that are building the services around the VBO. If you take a look at the infrastructure very quickly, this is the main set of components when it comes down to the VBO. So essentially, you have the VBO server. The VBO server essentially is the brain. Is the main component is a Windows. By the way, is a Windows server, and this one is responsible for creating the jobs, executing them, notification settings, everything that you can see and do in the UI. If the VBO server is the brain, the VBO proxy is the brawn. The VBO proxy is the one responsible for the heavy lifting when it comes down to backing up the data, writing this one to the repository, and restoring the data back and forth different instances. And they can be both online and on-premises instances. And as you can see, the same VBO server can manage can talk with multiple proxies at the same time. And the same applies also to repositories. So as the name suggests, the repository is the location where you are storing the data. And in the best Veeam tradition, the repositories, we have a storage and a vendor agnostic approach. So pretty much the VBO can talk with any type of storage you might have available on-prem and online. The second area is what we call the powerful automation and self-service restore. That means that the way we have developed this new version is including both commandlets, PowerShell commandlets and RESTful APIs. So if you want to orchestrate and automate the deployment of the VBO, so think about if you have any solutions, so the like of Microsoft Orchestrator, Ansible, Chef, Puppet, just to name a few, you can use the built-in commandlets to orchestrate not just the deployment, but also the jobs and how the VBO operates. So you can operate at scale. On the right-hand side, you can see a sample of few RESTful APIs that we provide, and in this case with Swagger. And Swagger is the default framework that developers are using to create and test applications. That means that service providers that want to leverage this service, basically the API service, this means that they can offer the VBO as a service to their tenants by building a web page where the tenants they can connect to and get advantage of the Veeam Backup for Office 365 data protection. Last but not least is the expanded platform support. So what we have done in this version is to include and support even more type of objects when it comes down to the Office 365. So for example, in the case of Exchange, we've included public mailfolders, shared mailboxes, resources mailboxes. So think about the like of, for example, room and equipment, just to name a couple. But we also have extended support to include special regions, which include China, Germany, and the Department of Defense in the US. Of course, we are fully supporting also the default regions when it comes down to the 365. Very interestingly, one of the most important thing when it comes down to the platform support is that by default, the same installation, the same deployment of the Veeam Backup for Office 365 also includes full support for hybrid deployment. So a hybrid deployment of 365 can be a combination of situations where you're moving to the 365. So literally you're moving your mailboxes, your SharePoint content, and your OneDrive content from the instances on-prem into the one online. But you may be also in a situation where you say, okay, I want to have a hybrid deployment where I have a set of resources running on-prem and a set of resources running online. Now, the nice thing is that when the VBO is is operating this type of environment, we are detecting this relationship between the on-prem and online instances, and we are sharing the same backup repository. In simple terms, that means that you can use the same installation, the same deployment to cover both scenarios, and that will also help you to make swift restores between online and on-prem instances and the other way around, but also to export or restore exactly the same type of data into other instances. So, in summary, if I want to give probably the three main takeaways that I see as the most important when it comes down to protecting the Office 365 data. The first one I would say is with Office 365, but more in general with any cloud SaaS cloud provider, also a PaaS, so platform as a service cloud provider, it's your data. You own it and you control it. That basically means that even if that data or that workload is running to a different infrastructure, that has never changed the responsibility model. In fact, in the case of Office 365, we're talking about a shared ownership or a shared responsibility model between you as the tenant and 365 as the cloud provider. The infrastructure is very robust and is scalable. The default retention policies, they can be too complicated to a point where it might be difficult to follow up on what is happening on every single item or email or document within the infrastructure. And that applies to Exchange, that applies to SharePoint, that applies to OneDrive as well, and does not provide really an easy method to operate swift data recovery. So think about how not easy it will be to, for example, restore the data that is 30 days old, or maybe is 7 years old. So depending on the type of regulation you have to adhere with. And last but not least, the Veeam Backup for Office 365 by means of the VBO server is a simple installation that can both scale out and scale up. As soon as you're increasing your footprint when it comes down to your usage for Office 365. So the services online, but also for the correspective services running on premises. And that is also true for hybrid environments where you're sharing essentially the resources between on premises and online. And that was my last slide. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.